Probably so pretty up there.
Right on the third.
Yeah, she said it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. You're good to go.
All right, thanks so much, Matt. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time. It's 7:10. Prior to this, we were in executive session doing a review of personnel and special education. So, Julie, who is live from Saratoga, could you do our roll call, please?
Sure. Barbara Dayton,
Here.
Tim Frazier,
Here.
Dave Conlon,
Sure.
Amy Rivera,
Yeah.
Pat Brabant.
Here.
Thank you. And if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
On the other side.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a number of topics this evening, and we do have, since it is a work session, we have public commentary as we, after each topic going on. So we are going to start this evening with a presentation from our new Special Education Director, Kristen Curnow. So Kristen, I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me this evening. Board members, you have some of the information in front of you. I'd like to start with registration. So in my time, since I started here, really in late August.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I just want to move a little closer.
We've been looking at registration in what we did, which was wonderful here, is we have online registration. However, we've lost the human touch. So what we're going to be doing is when we have intakes with children to our school district, we're going to make a concerted effort to at least call the parent. I've had a lot of phone conversations with parents. And obviously the goal of that is to get a better understanding of the child's strengths, perhaps their needs, and also to make sure that we're appropriately placing them with the necessary services or any of the testing protocols that the child may need when they start at our school district. In regards to special education, going forward, this year will be a little bit different because hopefully we'll be able to visit our children for preschool. Unfortunately, last year we weren't able to do that. So again, that human touch, where we'll be able to go out to the preschools, and before our children come to us next year in kindergarten, we'll be able to utilize an instrument or a tool to get a better assessment of them for next year prior to them coming. In regards to related services, the district had started using a program called Spire. There is a little survey in your packet. And what I did is I developed a survey and I sent it to the staff. Very fortunate, we had 40 staff members participate in my survey. And ultimately from the survey, what happened is that the school teachers themselves indicated what professional development they needed the most, and that was Fontes and Pinnell. So out of the 40 people that filled it out, 11 respondents said that they would like more Fontes and Pinnell, which does make sense because that assessment has been changed over the last couple of years. They also indicated that they would like some more training on Spire. We do have a couple of teachers here that have received, I wouldn't say extensive training, but I would say definitely sound training. And hopefully we can even use some of our own school in-house people, because really our goal is to have our experts on staff, not always having to reach out to consultants. I think when teachers, have a question, it's so much better to have someone, an in-house expert, than to have to reach out to someone like that. I am working closely with Cindy Allentuck, East Hampton. I've known Cindy for a long time, and she's very good at helping me sometimes recognize good trainers in the area. So she's going to get back to me with FNP training, as well as, perhaps I did ask the staff today during our superintendent's conference day if they had any recommendations for East End trainers, that, of course, I'd be open to that.
So what exactly is Spire?
Spire is a specialized reading program. It is very, very similar to the Wilson reading program. It's a little bit lengthier. Some of the teachers have been using it. It is not just a special education program. I do want to highlight that. It can be used for children that are English language learners. It can be used for general education children that have perhaps areas of weakness in phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. So it's a protocol, though, that you do have to follow. So it's kind of like I always say, taking medication. If the medication has to be taken at 8 o'clock, 12, and 4, that's what you have to do. So there's a specific protocol that the teachers do follow when they're using Spire. We also started a database that indicates which children are receiving Spire and what level they're on. And we've tried to streamline some of our services. So, if we know that there's 3 children in the building, we'll just say they're on level 2, that they would be working with 1 teacher. Because when we started the school year, we didn't have that information in the database. So we've been working hard to organize that to provide the services
So
to the
it's really
children.
an individualized program for kids, not necessarily everyone, the whole class is doing this, certain people who need extra assistance.
That's exactly it, in language acquisition.
Right.
Yes, and it's usually a small group. But you can certainly have 5 or 6 children. If they're on the same level,
Right.
you could definitely have 5 or 6 children. So it's not, the program itself doesn't say after this point you can't have any more. Yeah, it's just that they all have to be on the same level. In regard to newcomers, as we know, all of our districts have had, enrollment issues. When children come to us, our goal is to make sure that we are meeting their needs. Our populations change in all of our school districts. I mean, even over the last 10 years, if you've watched the data. And what we're trying to provide is to really look at the curriculum that we already have and figure out what we can do to enhance it. So some of the conversations that we've had with, my fellow colleagues and our school teachers are really about looking at different models like the SIOP model or co-teaching models that encompass more strategies and techniques that do also help English language learners or multi-language learners. One of them that I indicated here that certainly we could look at is Andrea Honingsfeld. She's a professor out of Malloy. She's known in all the school districts, Suffolk and Nassau County, for her work really with working with English language learners. And many of these strategies, I have to say, are extremely similar, if not the same, as in special education. So there's a lot of wonderful techniques that help out both types of learner, whether you're in special education or English language learner, or just learners that sometimes are struggling in certain areas. There's some really good strategies there that we're going to explore. In regards to data, district DDC or CIO means District Data Coordinator or Chief Information Officer. All of the school districts have been charged with collecting data. At the Spring School District, we use a service through Eastern Suffolk BOCES where they do upload our data every Thursday. Every school district in the state gets uploaded every Thursday around noon. And what BOCES does is they send us back a file that's encrypted that only myself and 2 other people can open in the district. And it indicates any of the data issues that are incorrect that need to be changed. Some of these can be just a mistake. If you're putting in someone's middle initial and you put a period at the end, it could generate a mistake. But they all need to be corrected. And what's most important is when the state started collecting data, really just a decade ago, the SIRS manual has been updated every year, several times a year, and they've gone from 4 data templates, and now it's over 25 different templates. And unfortunately, the data doesn't stop. It runs all through the summer even. So they're always collecting data points, and these data points are really held to the utmost. They do indicate if we're going to receive state, and federal funds. So we do have to make sure they're timely, and we do have to make sure that we are correcting it. I did include in your packet just kind of the guidance concerning the role of the district data coordinator. So if you want to look at really what the requirements are and the deadlines, there's more information here for you. It talks about level 1 and level 2. And essentially what Eastern Suffolk BOCES does is they're uploading our data into level 1. And when it's in level 1, that's when we have time to make those corrections before it goes on to level 2 and it goes up to the statewide data warehouse. So if you want a little bit more understanding, you certainly can read this. The reporting deadlines are always updated, and there's a monthly meeting. It's a 3-hour meeting at Eastern Suffolk BOCES. It is still virtual, so it's easy to attend. And they have all the paperwork, and they lay it out sequentially what is due next. So, for instance, we're working on the staff snapshot right now. That's one of the data pieces that the state is collecting. They look at teacher certifications. They look at children's attendance records. You know, they look at everything you can possibly think of. So it's very important that we are timely with this and that we have the expertise to know what they're looking at.
So as they're pulling up this information, what is it that we're putting in? Is it based per student or per teacher or both? And then you can pull out certain fields to check attendance or reading level, or what are they, overall are they looking for?
So they're pulling from a couple of databases. So we at Spring School uses eSchool. So from the eSchool, they do a data extract, and that data extract is typically with students. Like we know, that's our student information system. They also pull information from Envision. Envision is where we store staff information, so certification, etc. So they're pulling, they also pull from Frontline, which is where IEP directives, our 504 plans, etc. So they're pulling from different databases. And that's the service that they provide to us, which is great because that in itself is typically a job in a district. You will have one person that is your technology director, etc., that's just pulling the data because you have to be proficient in all of those different databases, etc. Now, for us, we're on the receiving end. So our data gets pulled for us, and we have different people from Eastern Suffolk BOCES. There's different roles at Eastern Suffolk BOCES. When there's something that comes up that's incorrect into level 1, that's when they send us back a report. So every week I can count on something, of course, in one of those databases, which is common. It's nothing to be worried about. It's just what happens in school districts, and that's why they have these positions, and that's why they do what they do. Every year they seem to add on another template because they find that they want to look at something else. This is what eventually funnels into like the New York State report card. So when you wonder, how do they know all this about our school districts? And if you spend some time on there, you'll see that all of these different data points eventually equal up to fields that they have allocated as being important or relevant in helping us make better decisions in school districts. Okay. You're welcome. Something that, we've started since I began is we do have the Pbs Team, which is made up of, it's comprised of our school counselor, our school social worker, and our 2 school psychologists. So we do meet on Tuesdays, and there we talk about students. And when we had our superintendent's conference day, we really spoke to, when there's something that we may have concerns about with any regards to our students. We have a wonderful support team here. And before you might even go to a building principal, they're the people to go to. They're the people to ask those questions. I'm having a problem with this. I have a challenge with this. How do you reach out to families? There are also people that, reach out with the teacher. So just utilizing the staff in that way. Some of the things that I've spoken to, even with our school counselor, she's now attending with me to the Suffolk Director's Guidance Meeting, which meets 4 times a year. And we always have, at one of those, usually Mary Beth Casey comes in and tells us all the new requirements, even for the Regents diplomas, and what's changing, when they got a new by literacy seal, etc. And it's really good, even though we're only in middle school, remember, we're preparing our kids for high school. So it's important that we have that information and that we can, help our parents so they understand when their children leave here in 8th grade, what would be the expectations of the high school, what kind of diplomas are out there. So Mrs. McCauley has been going with me, and we hope to expand some things. Some goals I have are, just having maybe college month. where kids hear about different colleges and they're exposed to it. Just kind of opening up a little bit more. Therese Allen, our social worker, really working a little bit more in family engagement, working with our newcomers, helping them when they come to our school district to be acclimated, because so many of them are from different areas, and they don't necessarily understand what we do here at Springs. So working with that. And then finally, I just indicated to you some of the meetings that I attend that you can certainly, look at. But just so you know what kind of meetings that I'm involved in and the professional development that I receive, and working with our colleagues, on the East End as well as all through Suffolk County, because that's what really helps us make better decisions for our children. We learn together. I'm a true believer of that. And I don't know, does anybody have any questions for me?
So again, I really appreciate the notes and the information. I guess the bottom line I'd like to hear from you tonight is tell us what you need in order to kind of address some of these things, and as we look for the future, be in a better position than we are right now.
Sure. I think, as a 3-day employee, obviously it has its challenges. I work for the district not on those 3 days. Many times it's well over those 3 days, which is fine. I know that in order to be successful, I have not been able to observe any of the teachers, which I know is contractually my obligation. But with doing the DDC or the CIO position, that definitely does require at least 3 hours, and that's a minimum of my time during the week, and that's without a meeting. Tomorrow, I have a special education reporting meeting that's from 9 to 11:30. The meetings are very intense. I do take notes, and I share them on Google Drive. And what I do is I highlight for the building leadership, the superintendent, reports that are going to come up that they need to be aware of, because the data hits every department. The business department, all of us have some piece in that data. So that's one area that definitely we have a little bit of a need in that respect. The other need is that from when I started here, the clerical position, she's split between special education and human resources. It is difficult being in the middle of the building, so to speak, because she's answering a lot of questions, not necessarily related to special education and or human resources. But most of her day is very busy. She's very busy from when she comes in till when she leaves. She does take her lunch, but I think that would help with the flow. And it would also help make sure that we're always in compliance with everything that we're doing. Special education, it's important that we get it right the first time and always get it right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is more time, your part,
Yes,
especially when it concerns observations, which should be place.
correct.
And then additional clerical help in your office that would help your secretary stay more focused and effective with the script.
That's correct.
And then I know Deb had talked to us about having support for teachers besides yourself at different levels, which are different, elementary and secondary. So there would be more possibly designated teachers who would be working with their colleagues in those areas.
I think building out the co-teaching model, and I don't just mean that for special education, I mean that for all children. Having our teachers, and I think that was very clear today, it was very evident from the teaching staff. They want more time to build their skill sets together. I think that collaboration piece, I know how important it is for me. I learned so much from other people. And I think that's an area that they're craving. They want to work with each other. I think, and I really commend the board. I know one thing that Ms. Winter had shared with us today was even the ability to pay subs equivalent to East Hampton. So we're really hoping that that makes a difference, because we want to encourage learning, but we also need subs. and that becomes a hindrance to us. So I really commend all of you, because I'm hoping that that's, going to open up a path to where we can have more PD for our teachers, which helps our kids.
So as you were saying, originally I know that you thought that perhaps like an additional, well, we were looking at this position, type position, do you feel that that's still going to be a necessity? Or the role that you first envisioned, has anything changed since it's really been more in the weeds, as it were?
In your absence to take on, the supplies and you're meeting with the psychologist and being able to follow up after you meet with the psychologist, okay, I think we really do need to make sure that this kid gets this and this. Do you still see a need to have a teacher on special assignment, or a teacher get a stipend, or a psychologist get a stipend for helping you out on the days that you're not here, to do some of the managerial kind of things or the management things? Is that still a need?
The jury's still out.
Still
I
out.
know, and I'm always, I think you can tell, I'm very cautious. I like slow and steady. I think, and I can do phases, phase 1, phase 2. I think having Suzanne highly focused, me taking data on that, because I've been watching the data and seeing how that transpires, that may be enough. And then me being able to work that extra half day for the data, that's like a good first step. And then we can come back and we can look at it, and I can certainly put together even a more financial aspect, like in January or February, whenever it works for all of you, and look at some more data points to reflect upon, to see how we've progressed, and then what would our next steps be and next goals be.
When you mentioned a little earlier about getting things right the first time, you started briefly talking about the 504, the distinction difference between that and IEP, and sort of held that off for now. So can you explain to us all, like, really what's the difference there in getting the right category?
Right. And obviously Ms. Winter and I have had this conversation. I've had the conversation even with our attorney. When we're classifying a child, whether it be a 504, Section 504 plan, or a child with an individual education plan, we really want to make sure that the parents in particular understand that we're saying this child has a disability. And that's very serious, and that's something to consider. I think that sometimes we throw that terminology around very, very nonchalantly, like it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. And I always think about, if I was that child, how would I feel? So those children know that they have an IEP. And when we tell them that they have an IEP or a 504, we're telling them there's something wrong, that there's a reason that they need help. And that may be okay. But if they don't really need help, then we need to think about it, because can we provide those services? That's the big question. Can we provide those services without having an IEP or 504? Because to me, it makes sense that all children should get what they need. We shouldn't have to have a document because a child needs something. We should just want to do that. And I think great educators and great teachers do that instinctually. They say to themselves, you know what, I know this child, is really struggling with X. And you know what, I'm going to pull them over. I'm going to modify this a little bit for them, and I'm going to see how well they do. Because maybe if I take a step back, or if I teach it to them differently, they might get it. And I think we've gotten into the habit of, and it becomes the mindset that if you need this, then you have to have an IEP or you have to have a 504. To me, that's the reaction. Instead of doing what and being
You're muted?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, good. How are you?
I'm good.
proactive.
Yeah, I just left about.
You're not muted.
Mike, you're not muted.
It's okay, he is.
Thank you.
It's okay. But being proactive. With that said, there is a difference. Both of them, you are, as a committee, looking at data points and determining that a child is disabled. From there, you have to really decide which one is most appropriate. So 504s are really most appropriate when you look at it. It is more often than not medical, more often than not. And Originally, when the 504s were starting to really come with school districts, many of them sometimes were because a child had a head injury, had a broken back. I mean, a lot of them were very medical. They were also made for children that had like a club foot. I've had to put ramps in schools so children could successfully move around. Perhaps they needed adaptive equipment. Children with cerebral palsy that need adaptive equipment or technology to make their life easier and so they can be like everybody else. Where an IEP, an individual education plan, you are saying that the child fulfills one of the 13 classifications as outlined by the state of New York, but there's a specific section in there where you're writing about the child's academic needs, their social development, their management needs. So you've got these areas that everything that you write that has a need needs a goal. And those goals have to be measurable. And those goals are measured, in this case, in Springs, 4 times a year. Could be 3 times a year if you were a trimester school, okay? So, and then at the end of the year, you come back, you review that, and then hopefully the child makes progress and you make the goals a little bit harder, et cetera, et cetera. With the 504 plan, you're not looking at goals. So that's where they're very, very different. You're not writing on there, you're writing accommodations, you're making accommodations for a child. So perhaps I had a child, not me, but a child that I worked with that had a vision issue. So he required an iPad where he can make everything bigger, okay? We knew on his test that we had to get him large font. And that's the difference between the 504 and the IEP for most times. You're gonna see maybe some cases that are different. I know, Miss Winter, I talked about, and I've had children with diabetes. Then, and if they have a device that they're wearing that needs to be able to access the Wi-Fi, well, then the school district has to make sure that they have enough wireless access points, WAPs. So the child can always check their levels. So that's really the difference between a 504 and an IEP. And sometimes it's just educating people because they make mistakes, people. You're welcome.
Anything else?
I'd just like, first, Christine, I'm glad you're here tonight. I appreciate you being here. I know because this is a really important area in the school, and being a building principal, you are working with on a daily basis, not only with staff, with students, parents, and with our director. So I would be interested in your perspective as coming through a different, not a real different model, but certainly different things are changing, things are going in a direction seems to be focused on making sure that those mistakes made have to be corrected and as we move forward, that there's a lot of support from staff and training. So as you listen to this, what can you share with us from your perspective as a building principal?
Thank you. First of all, it's been a pleasure working with Dr. Turner. She's wonderful and she's so knowledgeable. And we have offices right next to each other, so we are in constant contact.
We can even hear each other.
Yes, through the walls. But so I agree with Kristen that, our job is to give every child what they need. Our children are getting, we have children with deep needs in this district, and we have gotten a lot more children with deep needs in this district, even as recent as this year. I think it always comes down to time and resources. And I agree that more time to really dig into professional development so that every teacher feels that they are equipped to provide what we call Tier 1 interventions, which is basically best practice in the classroom, but bumped up to a degree that is very differentiated and very targeted to meet the needs of each child. It's easier said than done. That requires a lot of teaching into. It also requires...
Would that be directly related to the co-teaching model?
I think in general, overall, because I think that's where it begins. And then as far as the ICT classes, the co-taught models, there's different approaches to co-teaching. And we have in the past done professional development on that, but I think again, it takes time and it takes resources. The more that can be done in a least restrictive environment inclusively in a regular general ed classroom, the better it is for all the kids, for the kids with the IEPs, the kids without, the typical learners, the ENL students. A lot of those strategies cross over, as Kristen said, between English language learners strategies and special ed strategies. So I think that, yeah, time, I think way back when in the summer, I was sort of pushing for that half day once a month for professional development. And I think we all saw the writing on the wall back then. We knew that staffing was going to be an issue for subs. We still are seeing that, unfortunately. And again, being able to provide that professional time for people to collaborate and dig in. Everybody is incredibly busy at every moment of every day. I think having more support staff that's keeping all the records, that's handling the phone calls, that's helping teachers communicate with parents, as Dr. Turner said, those are all really, really important things. The state, I was the CIO for a few years, as the assistant principal, so I can speak to that. That is very time consuming, and the state is not backing away from data. They just keep putting more and more demands on the district for more data because they want to tease out who's getting what and is it helping and is it deserving of more funding at the federal and state level. So having said that, yes, I agree that we need more time. I agree that if you have a co-teaching model that's very successful, then you can start looking at other things that were put in place years ago, like maybe a TA in certain classrooms that maybe could be used elsewhere or used for more direct instruction or to fill some of the other instructional gaps throughout the school. The tighter the instruction, the more targeted the interventions, the more successful these students will be. And I think under the umbrella of streamlining all of our curriculum and streamlining all of these programs, that's something we had set out to do earlier, maybe last year, and we're still in the process of doing that, and this special ed piece is really an important part of that, whether it be Spire, whether it be the updated Fontes and Canal kits, everything is interconnected like a chain link fence. So the more we can do it together, then it kind of lifts everybody up. So again, resources, time for the teachers, whether they're ICT or general ed model, and certainly educating the parents and everybody else the difference between what a child needs and what a child is legally entitled to. That's a really important distinction. And I think over the years, we've been very, very generous about what we give. And a lot of times that is not exactly supportive to the student. It's actually restrictive. So I think that's sort of where we talk about.
Which are percentage right now, special ed identified students?
Special ed identified students, I want to say we're about 11. About 11%.
I think
There's still a couple of kids that are possibly being tested in the hopper. I think, we say that.
You're looking at it between 11 and 13%.
Yeah. And again, we want to be in compliance with the state. We want to make sure we're also teasing out whether or not it's a language acquisition issue, because we have such a large population of English language learners and Spanish speakers. And that's not always easy, especially when they're really, really young. But I think, again, the more the teachers know, the more informed we are and the better decisions we can make.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I was just, the term newcomers, is that basically, is that someone who is new into a special ed program? I'm starting to get confused with some of the words.
I don't think it's technical, Dave, just to be honest with you.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No, it's not. It's nothing from the state. It's in some of the districts that I've worked in. We've always used the terminology as newcomers, and it was any child that came into the school district. In particular, as we've seen, especially in Suffolk County, our English language learners, we recognize as a county, as a group of administrators, we all work with each other, we all talk to each other, that, again, another proactive service to have children when they come in to be in a little community. You know, some of our children really need to be able to identify with people that are like themselves. We all do that. So to have something that's usually run through social workers in many of our school districts or school counselors, but where kids come and they meet in a group and they talk about perhaps their home life, they talk about where they've been, their goals, just things that are about them that they have, that unfortunately, when you just take a child, you just put them in a classroom and they just come in, they don't have that opportunity. So it gives them an opportunity to make other connections, and then start from there, because that's right. First, you have to make relationships before you can learn.
Sure.
So that's where the terminology comes from. It was not from me. I'm not that creative.
All right, do you have any questions here about the topic we're going over?
Open it up before Kristen goes.
Matt, we're going to be taking questions after each topic, so if anybody has a special education question that wants to call in right now, we are available.
Okay, right now you have 0 callers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here this evening.
Absolutely.
Have a safe drive.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one thing, one comment. I do think that it's also important to recognize that an IEP is a protection for the child, and that an IEP makes sure that when they do go to a new classroom, it's not open to interpretation to what that teacher feels would be an appropriate accommodation for that child. So I just want to make sure that we're also thinking about the protection of the child that IEP guarantees, and that everybody must follow that protocol. And it's not something that's open to interpretation.
That's what it has to be.
That's what I before as well. I mean, it's not open to interpretation.
But that's why it has to be written so well and be thoughtful and follow a consistent process, so that all children get the same focus and resources and attention. That it's not helter-skelter just based on a variety of different things.
Right.
There is a prescribed way of doing that. It's an ongoing process.
And it's a fluid document too. Kids change.
And I would guess some kids maybe have more things on it than other kids.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that one section that I was referring to with, like, I'll just say academic or management or social, any of that management, those areas are where the teacher really identifies the relationship and the understanding of that child. And that that's probably the hardest part of the IEP. Because you really, when you read that section, and I said this today, and Chris Lamondo's here, I said anybody should be able to pick that up and feel that they really know that child. That's what makes it that individual education plan.
And it's the technical terms that lives in that IEP so important.
Yeah.
That they are thoughtfully put in there, that they are flexible and accountable, and they're based on things like an individual behavior. Things that are really a little bit more technical, but really help teachers define what it is.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quickly go over committees, because I know we have a list, but I don't know what we have scheduled for what committees.
Okay.
In terms of people meeting.
I've requested from each committee some dates, Barbara.
Okay.
If you look at the list, the Audit Committee, I'm just going to review them.
Right.
The Audit Committee is the actual Board of Ed, and you meet one time a year.
But there's just a list of there's not a list of all the people.
We meet one time a year, and you had that meeting already.
Oh,
Okay? The Technology Committee will be chaired by Ms. Cleary this year. She has a technology plan that has to be written by the end of 2022, June. So some of those members we're going to change. You'll see that on the 16th, and you'll have dates on the 16th of when that committee is going to meet.
Okay.
Okay? So there should be teachers on there. There should be a board member on. Remember, these are Board of Ed committees, so there should be a board.
Getting like updates on them at our.
Yes, updates,
Hey, Deb,
yes.
those changes are made for the board, so if they look at the agenda for the 16th, those changes have been made so they can look at the updated committees.
Yeah, and there's still maybe some more updates as we, speak to teachers, and we are missing some of our PTA members, our parents.
Okay,
Okay,
but some
so
changes have been made already.
terrific, like the people that are no longer with us, so. Policy, I did request from Mary Ann Sadowski some dates for her. And that committee will be yourself, myself, Julie, of course, and I don't know if Christy Lamonder
Sure.
in her new roles. Okay, great, so she'll stay with us. Health and Safety and Facilities Committee is chaired by Mike Henry. Christine and I both serve on that. Pat and Dave were on that committee last year.
Oh, that was what was usually like the buildings and grounds, right?
Correct. This has been the key committee for our health and safety during COVID. So they've already met once over the summer, but they should revisit this again, and inviting Steve Harding to that meeting to be part of that, as well as our new nurse, Laura
Christie
Burke.
should be on that.
We gave up our.
Yeah, we gave that up, actually, Ashley Delapola is interested in being on it now, but we have been following up actively with Mike Henry to try and get a date for that, since it has not met since the summer.
Okay. We will have dates on this as well, Julie, when this goes to the board on the 16th. Anticipated dates of our meetings.
Okay.
Shared Decision-Making Committee?
Which is also known as the site-based committee.
Right.
That actually, we didn't meet last year because of COVID, but we are putting together a new site-based committee that is also inclusive of many stakeholders, board members, teachers, parents, and community members as well.
So we'll have that for the 16th along with some
Yep.
dates.
That's like communal decision-making about certain things. You can either start initiatives, or I think one of our goals in years past was how to bring in our Spanish-speaking families a little bit more into some of our programs. So that was something we would meet on and come up with some initiatives, things like that.
It might be the
Are we going to go back to grading again? Are we going to go back to grading? Because where shared decision-making left off was when we were discussing grading policies and,
So
all that.
what's happened since then, the state now has a new initiative called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity.
Right.
So what we thought we would maybe do, and again, time has been the enemy here, is maybe have the old site-based committee be the Diversity, Inclusivity Committee, and then have the grading, equity-based grading and report card committee be the new site-based.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So more to come on all that.
we still have a capital project committee. I would recommend that we continue that until we actually close everything out. So, the board is on there fully, along with, Mike Henry and myself, and Ms. Cleary. Those are the meetings that really take place right here with our architects at BBS, when you think about it. The District Emergency Response Committee, the ERT team, they met during the summer. They did the plan, everything was uploaded to the state.
Yep.
And if there's any changes that occur, of course, Ms. Cleary will reconvene the committee to say, we need to make some change based on new regulations, new recommendations. We are keeping our eye on what is going on up island with suspensions, with discipline problems. I have reached out to the Sheriff's Department again for any kind of mentoring programs that they're running to mentor students. And we're, of course, keeping in touch with the high school. If there's any trends, all this TikTok stuff, we're keeping ourselves up to date with what's going on.
Wasn't there a recent meeting that was canceled that was kind of focused on that Hampton, it was last week?
Yeah, there was a mental health.
Mental health, yeah.
Yeah, so the drug and alcohol task force has really been changed to the mental health task force for the East End, and it was canceled last week due to the weather. So I think they have a new date I want to think it's like early December or late November, they pushed it out.
Sooner than later.
Yes, there is a concern out there regarding our students, and I have to say, we're very fortunate here. In some districts, it's regarding community members and parents. There's just a sense of, I
Anger.
guess,
It's called anger and fear.
yeah.
That's what it's called.
Right. And there's not enough resources out there, and I think that task force has our assembly people on it, our senators on it, the hospital, in putting our heads together and coming up with possible solutions to the crisis, really. The guidance plan, Dr. Chernow really has this. She's up to date and current, and she's involved Stacy in that. So that's really her entire PPS team is part of that. Tim, you were on that guidance plan in the past. Is that something you're going to keep as a board member?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Are you also going to sit on policy?
I should.
You did that last year. Okay. All right, so this will be totally revised with dates of meetings. And
I mean, we had so much going on last year that committee report sort of fell off the
Yes.
radar, I feel like, but we really should be, you know, if we're having the meetings, everybody should be apprised of what's going on, so I'll try to.
And these are Board of Ed committees, so,
Right, yeah.
you know, Board of Ed members present and reporting out with whoever the administrator is.
Right.
Get your perspective on the meeting and what took place.
Anybody have a question about committee items?
Sorry to get copies.
Capital project items. Go over it.
Okay, the gates. I know several board members raised concerns regarding the gates that were finally put in and the proper reflective signs on it. Those gates were part of the plan. We have revised which gates get closed at night to allow for egress from our campus. So the gates closest to the SYA are closed during the day and opened at night so that parents picking up children can enter through Old Stone Highway and exit through Ed Holtz Lane rather than come down School Street. School Street has been a raceway in the past, and we're trying to avoid people racing through to get through School Street.
Well, when you talk about parents picking up, you talk about after sports, like
Yes.
night sports, they won't come through the loop, the parents?
They'll come through the loop, but they won't go back out the same way they came because that's one way in. They're going to go right out past the SYA building.
They're going to capture. That's what I'm stuff like that, right?
Yeah, the locker room's right there for the exit out.
The doors, I thought the gate was further down, that's why. I thought before it was. Guess they'll walk up
It's
the
opposite
circle.
the loop.
Yeah.
Because the gates are opposite the loop as you're coming out, it's sort of directly across from that, the Ed Holtz, gate.
You have three sets of gates, okay? You have the gate here that I'm closing off to School Street. That's a definite.
Right, yeah.
Now we have these gates open to Ed
Yeah,
Holtz
so
Lane.
this gate is full.
This gate is to the traffic circle, so the kids are really walking up here to their parents who should be parked all along here. Like when there's a soccer game, those parents don't move their cars. They've been here to watch the game. The kids go to the locker room, get their stuff, and they walk out to the parking lot where their parents are parked on both sides, you know, for the
So
game.
the bus loop won't be used for the drop-off loop won't be used.
The bus loop is
No,
used,
the drop-off loop. The drop-off will be used in the morning, will not be utilized at night.
no, not after 6 o'clock.
It's one of the
Oh,
steps.
so parents are parking, sorry, in that parking lot that has to move to the parking lot, the loop is what you're talking about.
Correct.
The
And
little
the
parking lot.
Yeah.
And the buses, when they return, are returning here because those big buses can't really use that loop. The car line loop, our big buses can't use.
And the kids will exit through the school, back to the locker room.
So the visiting team's gonna come through the schools, Pete?
The visiting teams are coming into that big parking lot.
And the bus won't.
They're not using the loop. So they're coming in off of Old Stone Highway and they're exiting out. If it's before 6 o'clock, they're exiting out straight. If it's after 6 o'clock, they're exiting out Colts. Okay, past the SYA. Okay, seems to be working. I have
Yeah, I
no
would think
complaints.
they would park up there too.
There's plenty of parking up there. And
They would go up and park there. because that's
But
what
the only
kids
concern
would
I
walk
have
down.
is, the only concern is not using a loop, and maybe it's just me. If we have 25 kids on a sports team, right, and they come back after a game, right, the game's over, I don't know, my UFSD, I'm not, the game's over, now they're gonna go meet their parents. The parents park a lot, they walk to the parking lot, or they congregate and that's driving up to them. Because the car loop is closed, correct? That's shut down after 6 o'clock.
you can't use that car loop to have parents picking up kids after a game. Because not all kids are coming out or being called, Johnny, your mother is here. And then what you have is a car waiting for Johnny, and then another car pulling up alongside of that one because they've already picked up their child.
Okay.
You can't pass.
You can't pass, so my question is, what's,
You got to park.
So kids, they're going to the other parking lot, which is like the teacher's parking lot. Right.
so what we gotta watch out for the parents back in there, those parking spots with kids coming in the gym trying to get their parents, that's what I'm worried about.
But they're not walking, but nobody's using the driveway, they're just going to the parking lot.
Right, do we know one in that driveway?
No, not the driveway, so the
He's
parents,
worried about the parking
the
lot.
kids going, the
They're going.
parents park in the parking
I
lot.
think every school has that issue. They really do. I mean, I know I had it in media school where parents parked in the parking lot, the kids came out from the gym, in the lockers and got in their parents' cars and they left. I mean, at that point, you really don't have any control over it.
You're looking at 7th and 8th graders that are on sports teams.
I mean, I just, this parking lot is it's not like South Kensington parking lot, your parking lot was pretty big, right?
Well, not really. I mean,
This has 2 lanes. Okay.
but here's the problem.
These people are passing each other on 2 ways.
In my mind, the biggest problem is parents who aren't going to listen to the guidelines,
They
the
park on front.
rules of the game. They're going to try to come in and easiest way to pick up the kids and leave. And so I think if you have a designated parking place for parents to come and wait for their kids, then you're a lot safer than just having them hanging out all over the place, just finding a place to stop.
No, I'm just,
I mean, do we have night security that's on then, that kind of mingles out there to see that
Just till
everybody?
6 o'clock. 6, 7 o'clock, the latest 7 o'clock. If there's a game out there, our security guards will wait.
you know.
Right, this is only late at night when they come back from Up Island someplace, and there's not a whole lot, 25 kids is not a lot of kids when you think about that parking lot and people wait.
But I'm just concerned, the way we look at it, because all those parking spots are back out parking spots. You have to back out of the parking spots to go forward.
Yeah, but kids were being in the cars.
Not all of them.
I see Pat's point, but I don't know
I
how.
don't know what the answer is. I mean,
Well, the answer would be, do not walk through the parking lot, walk around it at the end. Or the crosswalk.
there's a sidewalk there, or whatever. You have to come up with a plan now, so we can put it in place. There's a sidewalk out there, how many the sidewalk? But I could see a parent backing up, because he's late to go pick up another kid. And, you know, one of the kids is running late, his mother's always out the end. Oh my God, my mother's gonna kill me, all right, that's like 15 minutes in the locker room, now my mother's really late.
I don't know how to police a parking lot at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night when a kid comes back from a basketball
All
game.
families have been in situations like that, whether it's church, whether it's the mall, whatever it is, you have to think that there's going to be a sense of, you know, kids paying attention and parents paying attention to what's going to happen. An accident may happen, but I don't know how you can say that, find a way that's going to prevent, because there's no way parents can come in and just wait for their kids, and they're not going to wait in an orderly way. They have to have a place to park.
I know they do, so I'm saying that there's some,
But there's like some parent education that can be done to mitigate.
right, that's what I'm saying, we have to do
risks
something
too.
proactive. I don't
So
wanna be,
talk about, hey, if you're here early, if you can go ahead and back into parking spots, that would be a nice safety thing, if you can back into parking spots when you arrive. make sure that the coaches are telling the kids to use the crosswalk. We do have crosswalks that go
Well,
across.
that's what I'm saying, we gotta
So I
educate
think
the
there's
kids.
enough things we can do to mitigate it, that it
Yes.
doesn't have to be a
Yes.
really, scary
I just don't want a
situation.
free-for-all out there.
I-
I took up the high school tonight.
I have seen parents tell children where to meet. So some do tell them, pull up here. Others say, I'm going to be parked by the tennis courts. Whether they're playing basketball or not,
They can't be parked by the tennis courts, because then the coaches would release them.
It's our responsibility to make sure that we see them get into the car. So I would say we have to make sure those parents are in the designated spot, like you're saying, in that parking lot.
I
I
think
just would
coaches
want
have to be
them-
out, yeah, they have to, that's part of their job.
Yeah, different areas, then you can't see that child get into a car. It's now on that coach.
I do think there's enough spots out there that, especially what we're concerned about the most is a bus coming in late, in the front here, 25 kids get off, they come to the buildings or locker rooms, they go out the doors to meet their parents, the parents should be parked in their parking lot, and there should be a coach out there with them as they go in.
Well, that's all, let's put some sort of plan.
Maybe everybody parks, you ask parents to park on the side that's closest to the building, that way you don't have kids walking through traffic with their cars, you say, everybody park on this side, there's.
When we have the sidewalk,
You can put cones on the other side, and put a cone for a parking spot, and just block off that way.
we can be creative, I'm
Just start
just,
with asking people to park on the side closest for safety, see and see how that's.
Yep.
They'll get used to it, just like they got used to dropping off their kids. It might take a couple times, but the parents are really good about it.
no, that was still a concern that some, with the thing there, people are, there's 2 lanes, and then when they fall into one, parent wants to come another one, that costs faster, that lasts faster. I haven't seen, but I've been told this by the parents, that there's not even common courtesy on parents dropping off. It's like the kid's late anyway, so what's the difference? Get up earlier.
Yeah. And again, it's really hard to control.
Okay, I can't control parents, but that way, I just don't want to see, there's a way we can
I
not
agree
have a kid hit by a car, I'll take every precaution.
Well, yeah, I get, no one's going to just.
And not just dismiss it and say we can't do nothing about it.
No one's dismissing, just the fact that I think the way it was designed was to help us out with that from what we had before.
Yeah.
Because before it was really great. We had cars going all over the place.
You just get stuck at the end with it. If you were late to pick up the sign.
I think our lighting is very good
Yes,
too. Our
our
lighting doesn't go off till like 11 o'clock. So yes, games may be a little later now with transportation being what it is. So it is going to be dark when they get back, but there's lighting out there in that parking lot, so that parking lot should be used properly.
And everything, the timers are all set.
Yes, there was a sensor.
Okay.
And construction crew will be out enough, so all people those red barriers in the way on
Correct.
stuff like that. But they had, and all playing halfway open, but this whole time is open.
We can include our athletic director in this.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Of
asking.
course,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
but they
yeah.
wait with the kids listen, they follow.
Absolutely,
It's
it
great.
never hurts to remind and to.
Yeah.
Right, I agree. Our students are really good at telling their parents what they need to do
Oh, there
too.
we are.
We email, we text, but when you actually say to a student, please tell your mom not to drop you off in the front of the building, I don't see it happening again.
I don't want to be embarrassed.
So. All right, capital project punch list.
Just added something to it today.
Yeah.
That's the problem with this punch list, is that every time you turn around, there's more stuff being added. But I have to say today, it was superintendent's conference day, and we did give our contractors free will over the building today. Just stay out of our gym. Stay out of the small gym, stay out of the big gym, commons area. So
The
that we,
volleyball nets up yet? You got the volleyball net yet?
yes,
They got it done? They fixed the basketball?
yes.
Good.
The only thing they haven't fixed are those boxes where the wires are in the gym floor. It's metal that has to be fabricated, and it seems like it's such a big deal. I feel like if I knew a fabricator, I could get them done already. So that, yes, they're still taped down. We had the telephone company here. We had the PA company here. We had the heating company. That was the banging that you heard in Julie and Kelly's office. We had the fire alarm company here. He waited to test the fire alarm until 3:20. He knew that he could not do that during the middle of the day. We are making progress. But some of the doors have been replaced, the fire doors have been replaced. They were supposed to replace both garage doors today. There's construction missing for them to install the doors. So now Stalco has to come back and do what the garage door installers need so that they can install the garage doors. But the garage doors are actually here. The good news, I sent you in an email. UL was inspected by a private company, which you paid for. It's underwriters. For the electric, remember JVR said they could plug in old to new for the generator? It did not come out to anywhere near where JVR said it would. It's like $2,000 to $3,000. I'll have that change order for the 16th for you. Very minimal of what we need to do so that JVR can certify our electrical and get our generator up and running.
So is that why the chain link is still around it out there, or is that?
No, the generator in the courtyard, okay, is the fencing. This is where, to my colleagues, that master list is important of what the district is responsible for and what the capital project is. So the fence inside the courtyard is our responsibility. We're still trying to get a fencing company come out here and put a fence around there. The fence around what's outside on the sidewalk was done. We're just waiting for them to take away the temporary fence. That has all been. No, that's just a temporary fence, not a permanent fence.
The old courtyard?
Yes.
What the stockade fence for a few years ago?
Yeah, but that stockade fence is not going to cut it now because that thing is huge. Generator is like twice.
Oh, it's in there now? I haven't seen it.
Twice the size, right. The phone systems is into all the classrooms. We need training, but we also need the phone system to talk to the PA. So that change order that you made to make sure that we had the right devices in all the rooms is the right device now, but you need to find the wire that connects the phone to the PA system. And literally it's in the ceiling someplace and they're working on that. Pyramid, which is your heating, is 90% complete. They were here all day. Everything today is digital. So this morning they wanted access to the computer area, and I said, wait a minute, you're heating. You belong downstairs. And he says, no, your system works off of a digital box that's in there with all your computer stuff. I said, okay. I was leery about letting them in there. But there was a box that's all directed towards our heating, which is now all digital.
Did the site supervisor bring them in? Or did he come directly here?
No, he came directly to me because it was 6 o'clock in the morning. Our contractors have learned that if they want to get out here on time, they need to be here early. So I wasn't here as early as they would have liked because I went to vote first. So I let them in at 7:30.
So she was like, if this contractor for the job wanted to do it, should our site supervisor be here that early?
Our site supervisor has been here later because we have people in the building after we're all gone.
But should they hire somebody else to fill up that time, rather than taking the superintendent's time with your doing?
It's not a big deal to let people into the building. I'm usually here by 6. This morning I wasn't here till 7:30, so some of them sat out in the parking lot who don't have keys. A lot of the contractors have keys to the building, but this particular contractor did not have a key to the computer area because that is under lock and key. So, the volleyball sleeves were done. The floor box outlets are not done. The portable is almost cleaned out. I didn't go over and inspect it. We will be getting what they call portable.
Okay.
They had,
This is G though. I like that.
they had stored a lot of their supplies in there, like electrical supplies. They need to clean it out. JVR needs to clean it out. Attic stock is on the other side, which is our shipping and receiving. So we need to determine what we're keeping, what we need stock of, floor tiles, some of the extra seating for the benches for the gym. You know, there's a paint, there's certain things that are ours, owners. So we're going to be looking at that and where we're going to store that. Garage doors I already spoke about. The balusters in the front, I don't know what's taking so long. They need new plans from BBS because we changed the way we come in. Now the balusters that safeguard children that are on the sidewalk, they need to be put in. The balusters over by the garage and the portable are in. But the circle are not in yet, so we're waiting for plans. Advanced doors were here over Saturday, and they'll be back again this Saturday, putting in the rest of the fire doors, and they look really nice. They're like really nice wood doors with glass panels on them. The chairlifts have not been programmed yet. They did receive some sort of fuses today, and now we need JVR to not only make them operable, but show us how to operate them and show us the safety switches to turn them off.
Are we any fault by not having, are we required to put these lifts in? Are we any fault by not having alcohol?
At this point in time, we've accommodated any student. There's no student not getting banned because they're not accessing the stage. There's not any student that's not being denied E&L services, because that's the room that's up there.
Staff members?
Staff members, no, not at this time. But that's what they're there for.
Yeah, I know, that's why I was wondering.
Yep.
They're not operable, they're operating in school.
They're required.
Yeah, they're required, but they're not operating right now. They're
Right.
required, they should be operable, that's my question.
As soon as possible. As soon as possible is what I'm being told. The list is,
Yeah.
you can tell that we're making progress.
The last list they gave us was dated September 9th, when they put the list down. There was no completion date last month, right?
Right.
I'd like to see some sort of completion dates of what got done. That's not on there. That's what he's on.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the one I emailed you.
Yeah, no, so we'd like to
Yeah.
know some sort of completion date, some sort of finality of it, rather than just an open-ended checklist. You know, this is on back or that's on back, okay, but this is, you know.
No, you have,
Should be getting smaller.
you only have dates that it was identified as an issue. You don't have dates on here that it was correct.
It should, but
The completed date should be good on there. And then moving that to a separate list of completed items and just making the left to-do list smaller, I think it'd be easier to see what still has to be done, give us a better sense of, right? Yeah.
Okay, and BBS comes out when everything is complete, to sign off so that, I see Mike over there, so Mike can pay, last minute invoices. So nothing gets approved until BBS actually comes out and inspects.
plans from the final, once the shells come through yourself and the board.
Absolutely.
I do that.
BBS is in charge of the punch list. They work with Park East, but they're in charge of the punch list.
So is there any anticipated scheduled meeting for when, for review of that final punch list and review of the conditions for them and the capital committee?
You have a executive session with Park East on the 16th. That was at your request. They will be present for that. And then BBS will be here for the regular Board of Ed meeting. You'll get your regular capital update that you normally do.
What time is that meeting on the 16th?
16 is a Tuesday?
That's the same as our school board, I remember board meeting.
Yes.
Doing it prior to it, or doing a joint meeting, what are we doing?
You can start at 5:30, you can start at 6. Tell me.
Well, why do you have anything else for exec at that time? Is this a public meeting or is this an executive?
No, you have exec followed by regular board meeting.
Right, yes, I'm talking about our meeting with Park East.
Park East is exec.
Right, okay. Do we need an hour, do we need more than an hour with them and anything else?
If you can do an hour and a half, that would be great. If we do have individual contracts yet, Mike is collecting more information for you on a couple of items. Or a separate executive meeting just to do contracts, it doesn't bother me.
I think probably keeping it separate,
Yeah.
keep everybody's head a bit clearer,
Yeah.
rather than, because I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions about building.
Yeah, you requested the meeting with parking, so then you should keep it just.
You know, I think we included it by itself.
So, hour and a half or an hour?
Take an hour.
I think now we go back to the questions, right? Yeah, because if they come prepared, it shouldn't be an hour long.
Right.
You know, we're asking for updated plans list, complete stuff that was completed. Then that's our biggest concern, right? And outstanding.
Part East is regarding all of the extras of the board.
Yes, and all the extras, right.
Okay.
Mike was going to sponsor it for a while.
Mike, are you with us for the next one? I see a fuzzy.
He was there.
He was there a minute ago. There he is.
Back in the chair, Mike?
Mike, you sent the board
Yes,
a project
of
analysis.
cost analysis. And this is all
Over that?
based, huh?
Would you go over that with the board?
Sure. Yeah, this cost analysis is based on everything that we've processed, purchase orders, contract, every contract that was authorized, we created a purchase order from. And it goes all the way back to the very beginning, starting before the bond resolution, the bond was approved by the voters. We included the secret funding, the funding for the secret report. So total contracts and purchase orders that we've processed to date total $22,395,182. From there, we've had $437,171 in change orders. The biggest of the change orders came from Keith Grimes with that hard pan soil that had to be remediated. There have also been various contracts that have been completed that when it was completed, we didn't spend the whole contract, so we liquidated those purchase orders, and that totaled $38,000 to date. So, and then out of the actual expenses in terms of checks made payable to the various contractors was $18,934,766, which leaves an open balance on purchase orders to still be paid and closed out on contracts of $3,859,400. So the total contracts, which basically are column 1, the contracts placed, column 2, the change orders, and column 3, the liquidated amounts, and also should include the expenses, column 4, total $22,794,167. If you recall, the bond that was approved by the voters was $22,963,298. So as it stands right now, we have $169,131 still yet to be used in one way or another. Within the contract column 1, there are allowances built into those contracts, meaning that if the allowances aren't fully used, those items will then be liquidated, show up in the liquidated column, freeing up. And right now we're looking at remaining allowances on several of these contracts of about $108,259. So theoretically, if there's no additional change orders or anything like that, we could be sitting with about $272,000 of the bond appropriation unspent. And what will happen at the end of there, if there are no B-list items that we can use that money to pay for, that money then gets put over into the debt service fund and will be used to reduce debt service payments in the future over the life of the bonds, or 20 years. We currently have about 360-something thousand in that debt service, which was created by when we issued the bonds last summer. We received a premium on those bonds. That premium amount had to go straight into the debt service fund and will be used. So it's about $17,000 a year that will be used to reduce debt service payment costs to the general fund. And that is the mechanism by which you're giving money back to the taxpayers that was unused on this bond.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the contract allowances, the total here at the bottom, plus the green down at the bottom is then the amount that we would have potentially left over at the end.
Correct. And again, we're talking about here a few minutes ago, other change orders. Those change orders are going to serve to reduce that potential number.
So it looks like altogether, we've only had 4 contractors put in change orders. Is that right?
No.
From the way I'm reading that?
Actual change orders on their contracts, yes.
Okay.
The four, right? Oh, yeah.
We've had a lot of change orders, but it's only been coming from those 4 contractors.
Right, okay.
Like JVR, it shows for JVR a number of 17,688, but that's made up of 5 different change orders.
Right. So the change order is not dealing with the allowance, the change order is a separate.
That's adding to the contract.
Right.
I tried to lay it out as simply as I could, but my accounting mind, I think, works differently than most people's minds reviewing it. I hope this is understandable for you.
You divided the 270 by what to get the yearly debt service?
Right now, I've got around, I think it's about $360,000 in the debt service fund, which was the premium from the bond issuance. So that amount, when you divide it out for the 20 years, it works out to about $17,000 a year. Now, if this stands as it is, and we can take that 103,000, add it to the 169,000, that's going to be another 272,000 to add to the 300 and whatever it was thousand. So right now, I'm looking at $17,000 a year that can be used to reduce debt service costs to the general fund. This could be another 13 or 14,000. So now we're pushing it up closer to $32,000 to offset the debt service payments for the next 20 years. And again, if the board decides once we have reached all substantial completion on all of these items, and there are B-list items, and you'd rather spend the money on the B-list items, that's the decision for the board to make.
Cross that bridge.
Yeah.
Yep.
We still have the 5-year plan to discuss with our architects and with Steve
Right.
Hardin.
Right.
That has some significant recommendations in it.
Long term, yeah, and we get to that too. Keep in mind, we still have in our capital reserve, or it's a reserve for capital expenses. We ended the year with $1.2 million in that account. So when we talk about the 5-year plan, that's something that the reserve for capital expenses could be used against. We also have about $1 million, a little over $1 million in the repair reserve line in the general fund. So between the two, you've got $2.3 million sitting there that if the 5-year plan calls for some major work that needs to be done, again, for the board, that's a decision you can make once you see that report from PBS.
All right, okay.
I just, for Mike, all change orders and allowance were presented to you and Deb and signed off by the board?
Not all of them. At the very beginning, there were some that BBS just did without our knowledge. And I had to press them a little bit. And that's when they started rolling the rest of them through. So I'm trying to accumulate what I'm missing, what I have, and find out what I'm missing and get the details from John Longo so that I can give those to you guys so you can see exactly what they were.
You know the dollar amount? You don't know that either?
I don't have everything here with me. I have it back at the office. So I'd have to wait until I get back before I can give you the summary on that number. I just don't recall what it was.
What kind of items were those? Like very timely ones that they had to at the beginning of construction or preparation?
There was a lot, yeah, there were a few things at the beginning of construction, and I just don't recall what exactly they were because, like I said, they really didn't share that information with me or Deb at the very beginning. And it was just through a fluke. All of a sudden, I got this paperwork from John Longo that said, oh, you need to sign off on these allowances. I said, what are these allowances for? Who approved them? And that's when I contacted Antonio and said, what, how does this work? And Antonio said, no, even the allowances have to have board approval.
Okay.
I should have to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is all for that discussion.
Yes. Yes.
With her piece first.
Have all those numbers.
Mike will have all those numbers and is working with Derek.
Yeah.
All right, so we can go over those on the 16th then, also?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
My pleasure.
So the trees that you authorized for the $3,750 not to exceed have been planted. I was in touch with the homeowners. They seemed pleased, but they also wanted the board to know that they're willing to supplement those with other trees. I did reach out to our attorney on that. Not a problem, but we can install them, and they have to be on their property, not on our property. So there's really not a board decision to be made here. They can put them on their property.
Right.
They can do anything they want on
put on our property.
Yes.
But it's nice to bring it to attention also to the public. I mean, they hope to donate them.
Yes,
We require by legal counsel not to accept them unless they plant them on their property.
correct,
So, you know, we appreciate the gratitude. We just can't accept it.
correct.
We don't get any hard feelings, but we also get this whole thing.
They seemed very, very pleased. They weren't home. We didn't know that Land Tech was coming. So I reached out to them right away. They were in the city, and we were doing it through, texting and sending photos, and they were pretty pleased. We started the plants by their door. When you were looking at their house, it started at their door. It didn't quite cover the pool area, but it concentrated on when they were in the house, and that was their major concern, is when they were in the house. These plants will grow very quickly. They were kind of alternated front to back with, maybe 3 feet between them. So they'll fill out really nicely.
Irrigation out there? Irrigation?
There's no irrigation out there. I don't think we're gonna have a problem with our water table.
Yeah, but not having a problem with the water table, the field was really,
Yes, the field or something again.
yeah.
What are the basement again?
That rain that we had last week, as soon as it stopped raining, everything kind of went away.
Oh, we had water in the basement, you said?
We had water by the furnace, by the boilers. It came right in, not from the driveway. There are little wells that need to have the leaves removed from them before it rains.
That was new sidewalk, though, or the old sidewalk, though?
That's the old sidewalk there. It's where the boiler room is. There's stairs going down. If you don't clean those drains before any storm, you're gonna have water that slips right in underneath the door.
We have a maintenance program for that?
We do. Our custodians are on it.
Put a policy again, leave thin drains every time you think it's gonna rain.
I don't think that's
We're
a
gonna do it
policy. That's not a policy. That's
a procedure.
Procedure, sure.
We
Well,
had,
policy, the procedure
to their defense, we had a lot of wind. So even if those drains were cleaned before the custodians left that afternoon at 3:30 while it was daylight, those winds came in here, and I saw the leaves myself on the ramp to where the faculty room is. That did not, believe it or not, flood. The boiler room did. Sometimes it's flip-flop. It just depends on the amount of leaves.
We got another mold report back for basement.
We had another company come, their name is Renew. We haven't gotten their prices yet. We are having EnviroScience come back this week. He believes that the air quality will be different now that it's not high humidity, and vinegar was sprayed on the walls based on the recommendation from EnviroScience. And we have cleaning to do. We need to empty that basement before a company comes in. Otherwise, you are going to pay through the nose to have them wipe down stuff that we don't need anymore. So if I can get that EnviroScience report that says the levels are safe down there for people to be down there, I think more people will go down there to help us ditch what we don't need down there. The custodians have been down there. I've been down there. Staff have been down there to mark boxes. They've been very helpful. It's just, I don't want to see the district spend unnecessary money on ditching stuff that we can all pitch in and ditch ourselves. The books are coming up. We have a book library down there. It made room in my old little closet up here. It used to be the psychologist. Want some bookshelves, and we have a plan to bring up those books, and they should be all up by Monday. We should have a new book room right here on the main level of the building and not in the basement. Yeah, that's in the long-term 5-year plan to really fix that basement, you know.
We also, it came up over the week about issues with the driveway and the merge and what's going on. So how are things going on with the people coming in and merging? And there's that bit of cement that was shutting out that seemed to be too tight for people. And did you get an estimate from John Longo about a little hour?
No, I did not. You want that whole section cut off. Has it been a problem since they put the double lines in?
I don't know. I haven't noticed it being a problem. I mean, it sticks out.
It sticks. I hit it.
They had to protect that last car though.
Correct.
That's why that's there.
Correct.
The buffer zone.
Yeah.
But they did put the dotted lines in there. I mean, once you know about it, you don't hit it again. I can tell you from experience.
Yeah, with your car, you thought it would be there.
I did hit it. I did.
Your car.
With my car, after I was told about it jutting out, I just wanted to see it.
Oh my God.
I did. But the second time I did it, I didn't do it. So I learned from my mistake.
I don't remember our conversation. We were talking about now the car is speeding down the left lane when most of the traffic is moving in the right lane. And a car will pull into the left lane.
They call it
And
bypass.
cut all the cars on the right lane, and then right at the very end, before they make the left turn into the circle, they merge right in. And it's kind of like if you're one of the cars who's impatient in the right lane, you feel like you're kind of being taken advantage of by a car who cut the line all the way down on the left lane. Follow me?
I follow you, but at the early end, why aren't cars using both lanes?
Well, unfortunately, there's a single solid line there, and people are being told to stay in the
Well, there's 2
lane.
arrows.
What they need to do is move into the other lane so they're both filled up.
Well, there's 2 arrows.
Yeah, I know, but if you don't get in there down early on, people feel like obligated to stay in their lane. They really should be doing.
And they're good drivers?
Let's fill up both of
They're
them.
good drivers.
They're good drivers, but I think, we haven't quite given them the correct, message there is, we want you to use both lanes. So if people don't get in it soon enough, they're not getting in. Then that dotted line would then move over and fill both up there. So you don't have somebody taking, not cutting, but if you have nobody in front of you there, you're just gonna keep driving. You're not gonna, go as slow as the last car on the right-hand lane. You're gonna go up ahead. Now, people should not be speeding up there certainly. Do we have people in mind on that?
Yes.
I was just gonna
You
ask
have
that
humps.
because my 3 children were almost taken out the other day. I had to stop a woman who said she was late picking up her daughter. It was very scary. And she was probably going about 40 miles an hour down the driveway.
It says 10 miles per hour.
Yeah.
It says 10,
But after,
but these are the same
she went over the two,
I went like this, tell her to slow down.
she went over
Just
the
kept
two
going.
bumps. and
Went
made
over the 2 bumps, continued on that way as soon as she took the turn through the circle, picked up her daughter, and was exiting.
Were you able to identify that person?
I spoke to them when they came, I put my body in front of them so that they couldn't exit, and I said kindly that you're in a school parking lot, you can't be driving like that. She said she was sleeping.
Please report that to us so we can
Yeah.
make that phone call.
Yeah,
and get our
it was
security
really bad.
on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
we could put a sign up, they'll treat, we're gonna have video cameras anyway, 10 mile an hour under video surveillance.
The signs are up that we're under video surveillance.
Can't give a stick if it's on property. That's the only thing. But if they needed the same cameras, I'm worried about it when the kid open the parking lot at sports time.
You take pictures of their license plates and post them on.
Well, there you go, like you do it, like, what, you could do like up and down IGA with the bad checks?
You got
Yeah, they put your name on the cash register. Don't take this check. It was a list like
They used
that.
to blow them up.
Yeah,
We blew them up and put them behind.
eventually you did it, right? Yeah. No, but it's something that we done. We're not directing parents. That's my biggest concern about having those 2 lanes. That is my biggest concern, and that's what I've been saying all along. If we're not backing up to School Street on 1 lane, then make it a 2-way street, and even though it's not being used, only use that left lane. If we're not backing up to School Street, there's no reason to have, just to get off School Street. I come by the school at 8:20.
We're backed up on Old Stone Highway.
Also, I come by at 8:20, that road is empty.
Not anymore, but in the beginning,
But it was the first week. How many cars are going to double lane? Dave, you're here every day. How far is the 2 lanes backed up?
2 lane?
Yeah. There's never backup in both lanes. Like that, jammed right up to the Old Stone
No,
Highway.
it's always just the right lane.
Just the right lane.
It's just that one random car decides they don't want to wait.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And they raise
When
up
you're
the-
here probably at a more responsible time, I think that if it becomes an issue, it's exactly at that like 8:18 time, and you're probably here earlier than that.
I come by like 8:15 every morning.
Yeah, it would be good to hear, from staff who's
So
actually
we need to see
seeing what it's like at that.
We're all
at
here
that
too
time.
early too,
It
so.
seems like we're better off having the 2 lanes in between Old Stone Highway and that bump, and having it 1 lane in between all the rows of cars, so you're not having 2 people trying to merge them. Do your merge early.
you want the merge
So it's
up.
Have the merge at the corner instead of those 2 lanes going through
Right.
2 rows of parked cars, and use the 2 incoming lanes with the dotted lines.
Right.
Use them both, so you can be there safely, and then you merge, and you don't have this last minute when you're turning into
1 lane through the parking lot. 1 lane through the parking
one
lot.
lane through the parking
You
lot.
get rid of those cones.
Yep,
You put a merge sign
yep,
after the second bump, just as you start making the right turn. You're seeing the field in front of you, and that's where you merge.
okay, I'll speak to security tomorrow.
And then, maybe when you're taking down the stay and landing, you want to encourage people to use both lanes. I mean, it's not marked for that right now, but caution, move.
You're better off staying in 1 lane now, because it's a long road, and if you start switching lanes back and forth,
I don't think people, if you encourage them to move up and fill in, nobody's going to be switching back and forth if everybody's done that. If everybody's like, with the 2 lanes, if this lane is ahead, someone's going to move over. If it's not, they won't.
They move over when they're gonna be the one that's gonna get rear-ended on Old Stone Highway. That's when they move
Well,
over.
that's
If they're still on Old Stone
I
Highway,
disagree. I haven't seen it back up Old Stone Highway. No, I haven't seen the 2, Dave says he's going to see the 2 lanes, whatever you want. Just say, there's gotta be a better way than what it is.
I know when it's backed up on Old Stone Highway because tech tells us it's backed up at School Street. That's how we know Old Stone Highway is backed up because tech sees Springs Road and Old Stone Highway backed up. He actually calls on the radio and says, guys, what's going on? I've got a backup at School Street and Old Stone Highway.
Who did?
What tech?
Techie. He's one of our monitors and he helps with traffic. The PUE.
Yeah, he's at School Street and Ed Holt's Lane. If he can't move those cars off of Ed Holt's Lane, they back up the circle where parents are trying to pick up their kids. And they're backed up because they can't make the right because people are backed up on Old Stone Highway and School Street.
Is that the end of the day?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know you feel strongly about this, but I also feel strongly that I have faith that, I mean, well, there can be an occasional parent doing something, but we gotta get a dotted line in there so people use both lanes.
Well, it starts dotted. It
Yes.
starts dotted and then,
Yeah, but then it's like, it's a very short section where it's dotted. Barely gives anybody time to get in there if you're not really looking at it or thinking about it. And P.S., I noticed that the paint's actually coming off of the other solid line instead of the parallel.
wait till next coast open.
But I really feel like we should try that, the dotted line, having the merge happen.
Yep,
you
a
know,
lot sooner.
So it's safer up there where people are turning present, so crowded there.
Then the curve won't be a problem anymore.
No, it won't, because there'll be one lane. All right, I'll work with Tom on that tomorrow.
Matt, we were sort of talked a bunch about capital project stuff, so if anybody wants to call in, they can certainly do so with any questions about that. And if there's anybody here has questions about any of this capital project stuff.
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Mike, do you want to review the grant funding and what the total is there, just to refresh the board on where that money is?
Okay. As you recall, we received a $1.33 million grant from the New York State DEC. That money came in a year ago in September timeframe, to September, October. Shortly thereafter, we received a $227,000 plus grant from the town of East Hampton. Both of those grants were to pay for the innovative alternative septic system. In a lot of discussions with our bond counsel, our lawyers, and our accountants, it was determined that because the nature of the grant was to reimburse us for the expenses of the septic system, that meant that we had initially pulled $6,303,000 plus out of the capital reserve as seed money to start up this capital project. Therefore, the amount of $1,557,000 and change of grant money, in effect, had to go back to the capital reserve, the reserve for capital, since that grant was paying for money paid for a project paid out of the original reserve for capital monies that were earmarked for the capital project. So that money got put back into the reserve for capital. Then in May, we had voter authorization to allocate 1.1 million of that for the new roofing that needs to be done on the junior high. And if you recall, we did have bids on it. We did award a contract, and we are waiting for the contractor to be able to do the work next summer. As far as I know, they're holding their price and should be able to do the work in this coming summer. So that would have brought us down, leaving us $457,000 of those grant monies that were returned to the capital reserve, which are part of the number I mentioned earlier, where that reserve for capital is sitting at $1,235,625. The $457,000 is part of that number. So in a nutshell, that's really where it's at, and that's where the money is sitting, is that remainder of $457,000 sitting in the reserve for capital account on the general funds books.
Which might, if we want to do the playground.
That's what we were talking about, that we'd get voter approval, do a resolution at the May budget vote to have the taxpayers authorize us and allow us to take the money out of that reserve for capital. Anything that's in that reserve for capital, the same thing with the expense, the repair reserve. We do need voter approval to pull the money out and use it. If we do anything other, we can take the money out temporarily. It's like borrowing it, but we have to repay it within 3 years. So the best way to use that money and not have to worry about putting it back is get voter approval to do so.
Okay, Mike, what about if there's any reserve left over from the couple, you said it's about 230, looking anywhere between 130 and 260 left over.
That one, as I said earlier when I did that presentation, if there's money left over, there was a list of B-list items that we could spend the money without any other approval. The board can make that decision. But if there's nothing left in the B list, you can't create a new project that wasn't part of the B list. So that money would have to go to the debt service fund and would be used prorated over 20 years, used to reduce the debt service obligations, meaning the general fund wouldn't be burdened fully for the debt service. There'd be a little bit of a reduction due to the amount of money coming out of debt service.
Right, so that couldn't just go into the regular capital reserve?
No. There's some very stringent rules about that.
And Mike, do we have an updated B list?
I'll have to take a look. I do not have one. I'll talk to BBS and take a look at what's left on it. There wasn't much on that B list to begin with.
Was the other playground on it?
No, the playground was not part of the B list. The kindergarten playground was not part of the B list.
Okay. Courtyard? We'll take a look at the list with BBS.
I'll have to go over that with Jim Wade on that, what's left on the B list.
Mike, what was the rate on the debt services again?
The interest rate?
Yeah.
We got, the bonds were broken up into 20 different denominations, and it was started at 1.5 and worked its way up to 2, so the aggregate was about 1.7%. We got great rates, really good rates on it.
And we're going to be protected if rates go up over the next few years.
No, they're fixed rates. Those are fixed rates.
That's really important for the community to know.
Yeah, and besides that, like I said, we got some $370,000 in bond premium that funded the debt service fund, that's with a starting number of where I'm getting 17,000. That money's already in the account. That's our money already there to be used over the next 20 years to help reduce the cost of the debt service payments. So, that 1.7% aggregate, if you factor in that premium, is actually lower than 1.7. It's probably closer to 1.
Thank you, Mike.
Excuse me, school board, you have one caller holding.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Put him through, please.
Okay, putting him through. Unmuting last 4 digits of 8764. You are live.
Good evening, this is David Buddha. Thank you. Good evening. Hi. I've been listening to the meeting. The clarity, the audio quality today is much better than the last time I tried to watch a meeting playback. So I hope that's a good omen for future meeting audio technical abilities. My question is, and maybe Mike was just using loose language, but at one point in his discussion of the capital project cost analysis, he mentioned a bond amount of either 22 or 23 million, and I just want to remember and recall that the bond amount, I think, was about 17 million because of the about $6 million that was to be spent in the accumulated capital reserve. And then it was my understanding that when the 2 unexpected, fortunately available grants from the state and the town came forward, that $1.5 million should have gone to reduce the overall cost of the project. Now, I realize that there have been other capital expenses, and I know that you've discussed using that money for the roof repair, et cetera, but if you could just reconfirm, Mike, the total amount of the bond.
What I said earlier was that the total appropriation for the project was $22,963,000. And you're right, the bond itself was $16,960,000. We had used $6,003,000 as from the reserve for capital. So you add the $16,960,000 and the $6,003,000 and change, and you'll be at the $22,963,298. As far as the septic system grants are concerned, as I said, we did receive $1,557,000, and according to the accounting rules, we had to put that money, the equivalent of that money, because that money was given to us as a reimbursement for a portion of this capital project that was originally paid for from the reserve for capital. So that money, the equivalent amount, the $1,557,000, had to go back to the reserve for capital. Then we put a proposition up for the voters to take $1.1 million out of the reserve for capital for the pending roof repairs to the junior high section of the building. And out of that $1,557,000, theoretically, minus the $1,001,000 for the roof of the middle school, leaves us $457,000 of the septic grant money between the DEC and the town of East Hampton that is left in the reserve for capital.
All right, very good. I will look forward to looking at the actual cost analysis when it's available. But I do have another question. I know that October 4th, you did your end of the year transfers after all of the accounting for last year's school year was done. And the net result was your expected amount to be appropriated from the unrestricted reserves to be used for reducing this current year's budget shifted a little bit. Now, obviously, when you make those budget predictions, you don't know exactly how much money will be left over at the end of the year, but there was a $200,000 difference between what was budgeted as far as what you expected to be able to appropriate for this year from last year's reserves or excess, if you will. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on whether that changed the amount of money that needed to be raised in the next year's tax warrant.
What was presented during the budget hearings, the amount that we had appropriated included a portion of the unappropriated fund balance plus $200,000, $100,000 coming from, I believe it was the workers' comp reserve, and another $100,000 was going to be coming from the ERS reserve. Those didn't change. And that does, so any of that year-end manipulation that you're talking about, it did not affect the amount of money that's going to be raised for taxes.
All right. Well, I was under the impression, and maybe I'm misreading something, that the total amount that has been appropriated from last year's excess funds is $735,962, whereas the budgeted amount was projected $935,962. Am I losing? Am I lost?
Yes. The $735,000 was coming from undesignated, unassigned fund balance. The $200,000 you speak of came from the ERS contribution reserve, as well as from the, it was scheduled to come from the workers' comp reserve.
All right, well, I'll go back and take a look, but it was my understanding that the 2020, 2021 unassigned fund balance that you projected to be able to transfer to the 21-22 budget, in the approved budget, that amount was $935,963. And now it's been, the actual amount that's been dedicated to that purpose is $200,000 lower. You're saying that there's another $200,000 that's coming from other sources. I guess I have to just take a closer look at that.
Yeah. Great. That would be great. Thank you very much, Mr. Buda.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Matt, are there any other calls at this time?
There are no additional callers. Thank you.
Quick update on enrollment.
Okay, I think one of the board members wanted to take a look at this. I only printed out this enrollment report. If you look at your tab on your electronic copy, you can go back to every enrollment report that I've shared with the board. You can see the fluctuation from a month ago, from 2 months ago, from 3 months ago. This is a very fluid time for us. January, we get another hit where our enrollment tends to go up or down depending on how many students disenroll and then re-enroll in the school. So I think the question was looking at year before, 2019-20, we're not up 66 kids, we're down. Yes, that's accurate. I was always comparing us to last year. And you can already see that from the last time I reported where I said we had an enrollment of 66 more kids, we've had some students that have actually withdrawn and gone to other school districts. So we're now at really a 54 versus a 66 increase. We've lost students this time period.
Is that number here on this chart?
Yes, if you look at total enrollment without pre-K, 664 students compared to last year, 610.
But the year before was 678.
Right. That was your point, Pat.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I feel like when we used to have this, we always had a couple extra years along the side. If you go back to having that was.
It's at the bottom.
I'm talking about like the 2017, 2016.
Oh, okay.
Like,
okay.
For, just for a few years beforehand.
2019, 20, 2018,
we just have like a 5-year look back or something.
Okay.
I think that was whatever.
And I was able to see that on the,
Board doc.
on board docs, but it's not on this. I would appreciate looking at that on a pretty consistent basis also.
Those attachments?
Only, that you had a whole thing on board docs.
You have the attachment.
No, I don't. Not on this.
No, not on this.
No, but on the board docs.
On the board docs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of pages to print out.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to.
Okay, so if you just look at the bottom and click on each one, you will have it like each enrollment.
All right.
Okay, and you can go back to July and see what our numbers were like.
So that's just July of this year.
Yes.
Okay, but if we want the previous years. So
you want me to add columns here, 2018, 19, 2017, 18.
20, 19, 20, 18, 19. I think we should always look back for a few years so we have a better
like the last 5
idea. And I know
years.
that we used to have that have this back a number of years ago.
Excuse me, school board, we have one caller holding.
Okay. All right, can you put them on through, please?
Okay. Unmuting. Last 4 digits of 8764.
Mr. Buddha.
Good evening again, it's David Buddha. I appreciate all the information being provided with regard to the enrollment. And I appreciate that if you go back into the historical data just 2 years back, your K through 8 total of students is constant. It hasn't changed from 2 years ago. I don't know if last year the number counting, the criteria that was used, or whether students were counted with all of the remote learning and transfers and who knows what else. Maybe last year's counting procedures were anomalous, but the K through 8 population of the school is back where it was 2 years ago, which is fine. What I am also very concerned about, as you are, of course, is whereas the K through 8 population is stable going back historically, the high school population is burgeoning, and you've gone from 305 2 years ago to 329 a year ago to now 360, including the latest increase. So that's an increase of 55 high school students. And what I would like to ask you to do, if you have not already done, and I would hope that you have done, is analyze why and where these students are coming from. Are they disenrolling from parochial school? Are they moving from their primary residence in New York City? Is it new construction? Are families doubling up with net relatives? Are these new arrivals into the country? It's such a tremendous change in the high school population that you need to understand it so that you can deal with it budget-wise and otherwise, because at the same time, we have a stable K through 8 population. We have a tremendous increase, let's call it about 1/6, in 2 years in the high school, and it needs to be understood, it needs to be explained. That's my request.
Mr. Buda? Yeah, we have done that analysis. So out of 26 new students to the high school, at East Hampton High School, we have some students that are in other schools at the district's expense. They are Southampton, and Bridgehampton, and BOCES. So there are 26 students at the high school over budget, and 13 of those students are transfers from schools on Long Island, particularly East Hampton, transferred to Springs, Sag Harbor, transferred to Springs, one student from Massapequa, one student from Riverhead. The other 13 students are new to this country, and yes, Mr. Buda, they are doubled up. We do have Tina Giles going to homes and making sure that children are putting their head to sleep where they say they're putting their head to sleep.
Okay, so so I assume that you mentioned Tina. I guess you would call her the attendance officer. One of the things I guess she's charged with doing is checking out someone who already was a student at East Hampton High School, but they had been residing in a different part of East Hampton, and now they're residing in Springs, and she needs to confirm that there's an actual new transfer of ownership or a new lease or a new purchase of a property in the Springs. And because when someone is already in the high school, and the only thing that's changing is that the Springs taxpayers are now responsible, and previously they weren't, obviously you should be looking at that very carefully.
David, our district has done that for a very long time. This is not our first rodeo here with this. It's been a board's concern, it's been a community concern. Our administration is extremely experienced, and they know that they need to check everybody lives where they say they live, and then, move forward accordingly.
Okay, well, this is the first time tonight that I heard some kind of breakdown of the difference. And by the way, obviously, you're talking about last year, the budgeted amount versus this year. If you go back 2 years, the increase in the high school population that Springs is responsible for is even more significant. It went from 305 to now 360. So it's a trend that's running at a much different pace than the K through 8 population, and that is concerning. Thank you.
Right. Well, one of those bumps was our own grade here that was very high that went up there. But yeah, this year we got an unusual amount of students joining the high school, not from here, so we did look into it. Generally, we do not have that many, couple of students new going to the high school, but we have had larger classes than usual in the past few years leaving the 8th grade and going up there. We've been trying to build a contingency for that into the budgets, when it's like, oh, do we cut a bunch of stuff from the budget? Then we're like, well, we know we have this big class coming up in 2 years. If we cut the budget too much, we will not be prepared to pay for those students. And it's a constant juggling act that we are doing our best to be very mindful of.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hang up.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions about anything else at this time, folks? Okay. Then do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, Saratoga.
Good night, Saratoga. Yes.